Well, we posted a video from Guayaquil, just kind of letting you know what was going on while we were there. But I wanted you to know a bit of the background, and it's really fascinating. So, Dave, bring us up to speed on, what happened in the days leading up to our trip to Guayaquil.
Well, last year we got a call from Ecuador, and it was the director of, they call it the OSCE, which basically stands for the Christian Orchestra of Ecuador.
Yeah.
And they had said, called me and said, we had a dream and have had a vision that would be, if it ever could come to reality, would be such a blessing for us, and that is to have Steve come to Ecuador, to Guayaquil, and perform with our students. And they told us, now these are younger students, not really well trained, but we're going to practice really hard. Mm-hmm. So we had sent down the charts months and months in advance, and they had been working on these charts.
And in the first video, I told them a bit about the story of how the whole orchestra started, a rough part of town,
right?
The whole deal of trading weapons for instruments.
Okay.
So
exactly.
I that's part of the YouTube update.
Wonderful.
So now what happened after that?
Well, I got a call about 2 weeks before we were to leave. We were to leave on January the 29th to go down there. And the sponsor said, we had a terrible thing happen, and we have just had a real blow to the ministry. Mm-hmm. Someone had taken some tiles off the roof in the middle of the night, crawled through the rafters, and just cut a hole in the roof, dropped themselves down inside the building. This is where the academy is. This is where all the instruments are stored. This is where all the students practice and rehearse.
And where they had been saving up money to kind of help with certain parts of our trip.
They had been. And they were robbed. The thieves came in through the roof, let themselves down. They took 3 keyboards, 6 violins, 2 guitars, cash that had been stored in the office, and they simply just unlocked the door from the inside and let themselves
Walked out.
And so when the sponsor showed up the next morning, just a devastation.
Oh, my goodness.
I mean, they were at a really low point. So what would they do? I said, should we come? Should we not come? What are we going to do? He said, give me 24 hours, brother, and then I'll call you back. So they got together with some pastors and leaders and had a prayer service about what they should do with Steve coming and pursuing the concert. Called me the next day and says, you're not going to believe it. He says, we got together and had a wonderful prayer service. He said, the Spirit of God showed up in such a powerful way. And we had such a confirmation that, yes, this was to continue on, and please come. So we left not really knowing exactly what was going to happen. We got there.
And they'd said, whatever we had saved up to help you with is now gone.
Right.
And so you said to them,
I said,
we're coming anyway.
Money's never been an obstacle to say we're not going to come, because ministry is always God's work and not a work of having depended on finances exclusively. So we went knowing probably it was going to be a complete funded event by Steve Green and the faithful supporters of the Founders
Fund.
So
thank you.
Those of you who support, thank you.
Yeah, so we got down there. Well, they had added a new meeting.
Right.
And what they wanted to do, as thanks to the pastor of, it's called the Centro Evangelístico de las Asambleas de Dios. So the Evangelistic Center of the Assemblies of God. That's the name of the main Assembly of God church in Guayaquil. The pastor's name is Pastor Francisco Loor. And graciously, they organized a meeting the first night we were there, which was really a congress, they called it, on church unity, and asked me to be the closing speaker.
And that day, when after we got there, of course, it's always exciting to get there because there was 20 people at the airport with signs and welcome Steve Green, and it's just a fanfare, and it's great to be received that way. Where there's a lot of excitement that you're there, and then we go to the hotel and had a meeting with a lot of the organizers to plan out what the days would look like. And of course, they start with radio interviews, which are great because it confirms to the people that, hey, I'm actually here.
We're on the ground.
We made it, and we want to see you come. So radio interviews, and then a TV interview, which was they graciously gave an hour on the Enlace TV station. With some call-ins and interviews. It was just really powerful. And that's really the first time where we heard the director and the organizer of the orchestra give his testimony.
Yeah, it was
which
fantastic.
was really moving.
Absolutely.
Because for us, we had heard it, but not really the way he shared it, and it was very moving.
Yeah.
But after that, off to the rehearsal for the orchestra.
And I didn't go to the rehearsal
No.
because I needed to be preparing for that first meeting
right.
that was short notice for us.
Right.
So you went in a small room.
I mean, it was unbelievable. I think there was probably 75 people crammed into a room. It was probably 16 wide by 30 deep, and that was it.
Yeah.
I mean, standing room only, with just all the instruments packed in there. It was hot, it was sweaty. All the kids, all the singers, we were all there and rehearsed. But you could just sense the excitement of all those students and musicians who'd been practicing.
And the lead trumpet player is a kid, he's probably, 18, 19
Right.
years old.
Right.
And he was one of the first kids that traded in a weapon. He was the one that had a handgun, actually,
Right.
that belonged to his parents, his dad, and traded that in for an instrument. And now he's the lead trumpet player. And all those kids have stories like that of something that God has given them to do when they were just delinquent and wandering around the streets and really getting in trouble.
So back to the hotel, and then very quickly off to the church, the CEAD church, and we didn't know exactly what to expect.
I was expecting about 30 or 40 people in a very dimly lit room, and I'm going to speak to them on church unity.
Well,
Instead, we get there, and they've been roaring for about 2 hours with praise and worship and I guess some other speaking.
yeah,
And we got there, it was about 8 o'clock, I'm guessing.
right.
And the place was packed to the gills, about 1,000 people, standing rooms, people standing on the sides. And it was thrilling, really. And they gave me the platform, and the Lord, as He always does, graciously provides the very thing we need at just the right time. And so the Lord helped me, helped us, did a few songs. At the end, the pastor's wife, and of course she's also called pastor, the pastora, got up and gave an invitation, and some 20 or 30 people came forward, and she announced that I would be there to welcome them, and so I did, and got to pray with several of them, some really neat times of prayer. So that's day number one.
Wow,
And it was great.
It was packed. Great day though, and we could just sense the Spirit of God moving and giving, unifying really everyone on the ground, and looking forward to really Thursday, which was the day of the concert.
The day of the concert.
So that morning, we went really to the center. That was the first time we actually had a chance to visit and hear the story and walk through the different rooms and actually see the robbery site, see where they let themselves down through the ceiling.
The hole is still in the ceiling.
The ceiling. The evidence is there. The keyboard stands are there with no keyboard. So we witnessed all of that. And just a neat time of fellowship, and you got to meet and interview, I guess, talk with one of the ex-presidential candidates.
Right.
That was an interesting
He
time.
stopped by, and we had a really great time of visiting, connecting, talking about the Lord, just encouraging each other. It was a very special.
So it was fun. And after that, they had organized a lunch for us at really the home of a believer and a judge.
Yep.
And so we went to his home with the pastor and our sponsors, and there was probably 20 or so of us that had lunch together that afternoon.
Yeah, wonderful. They showed us tremendous hospitality. Really sweet folks.
And taught a song that was really ended up being a key song. At there, the pastor taught on the piano, and then Dick took chart, and Steve wrote down the words, and that became a theme song really for the rest of the trip.
I love it. It's called "Hay Momentos," and it's a great chorus.
Yeah.
Well, then, of course, the concert that night, and there were a few speed bumps leading up to that. There's always some drama, always some, disappointments, and always some, stuff that happens relationally. But in spite of it all, we arrived at the event, although we were about an hour late due to some unfortunate circumstances. But we got there, and they were primed and ready. And again, it was a great evening of communicating the gospel, and to see all these kids who really rose to the occasion and played so well. It was really just delightful, and to see just the Lord met with us and to see tears and just hearts kind of tenderized towards the Lord, and the kids thrilled. It really was a great time of encouraging believers there, especially these little young musicians who really have dramatic encounters with Jesus and come to faith, and He's given them a way to serve Him. And so that was thrilling. And then also just to be able to speak to the community at large.
And the director, David Suarez, who founded the orchestra, came to us and said, would you pray about having a partnership with us? Would you pray about maybe signing a document and being a sponsor, because they're a registered nonprofit with the Ecuadorian government? And he said, we're able to receive instruments without paying any import tax. So if you know of anyone who has instruments that they're not using, that are up in the attic somewhere, maybe they could send them to our office here in Franklin, and then we could send them down there so these students can have more instruments to learn and practice on.
And Dick Tunney, who's my musical director, is going to be in charge of and help us with some of that. And you'll be hearing about that a little bit in the future. But we want to organize some way. He gave us a list of all the instruments they need, and we saw some of them, and they really could use some help. They made music, but it wasn't that easy. And I think that there's a way that we can ship them some instruments and really be an encouragement to these folks in Guayaquil. But so many encounters and stories, and I mean, at every turn, something really dramatic was going on.
Always, yeah.
And so thanks to the folks who have supported this founder's effort of sending us overseas, we're the ones that get the great joy of seeing God working, but we want to share it with you so that you can be partners with us. So thanks a lot.